people like ourselves that were standing there and selling our soul for righteousness are now finding out where this luscious tents, unbelievable black cars, blue lights, bodyguards, and huge stadiums filled with balloons are now coming from. And we now see to ourselves that this opulence, hierdie gedrog, this animal that have been presented here, does not just cut it to the people that wear red. We have got people there that are still accused number one. En vragtig, it's been years since Zondo, and they have got the gall and the guts to walk and to be sworn in under Almighty God. There they sit. Have you no shame? They must be brought under the book, and then they must go visit Peter Groenewald.
So now the bear is actually weighing in on the VBS Mutual Bank scandal that actually rocked last week prior to the parliamentary address by President Ramaphosa and the debates in Parliament, you see. In this video, he's actually pushing for the fact that more justice needs to be pursued for the those indicted in the VBS saga by Matotsi's evidence, and that, you know, correctional services boss Dr. Peter Kronwald should actually be expectant of those who will be implicated for these crimes. Let's listen to how he describes what should go on in the pursuit of justice for those guilty of the VBS loot, and I'll be back for some really interesting reports on what the GNU now stands for and how the GNU could actually process and proceed with the persecution of both ANC members and EFF members or members of the opposition in general that have been implicated in this VBS scandal.
Back in South Africa, Neil, have you had a chance to look at that affidavit on corruption at VBS Bank?
Yeah, 296 pages. I must tell you, I'm not a very good reader anymore. I think my focus concentration, but the only thing that jumps out of this is gotcha. Gotcha. And now there are people sitting back and going, told you so. Told you so. What a nuclear explosion within the mere fact that we can now possibly see Floyd Shivambu and that man who says he's Teflon, Mr. Julius Malema, Cello, being sold out by the exact man who is now incarcerated and seemingly has sung a absolutely massive piece of music that spins down to guilt. Now, everything in that affidavit is assumed, it's allegations, but when you go read it, this is a wicked wing of a trilogy of a story of absolute deplorable carnage of a carcass of a bank so that other people can live the life of Porsche and Louis Vuitton. And this is going to be probably, Chris, the biggest test of the judiciary to stand up and say to two of the most senior members in a volatile national political party who bases themselves on revolution and for the poor, who continually tells the people that they want to bring back the marginalized, strike down the fact that there should be jobs and work for everybody, yet feasted on caviar, champagne, and Rolls-Royce.
Meanwhile, Neil, there are African National Congress members of parliament who are sitting at the cabinet Lekgotla now, who also have allegations of corruption or corruption charges hanging over their heads.
This was a corruption buffet. They all arrived at hotel corruption and they just had a eat as much as what you want. Chris, what is shocking to people like me that dabbled in politics for the right reason, that went in and said we need to go and sell a new beginning for this country for the betterment of the people. People like ourselves that were standing there and selling our soul for righteousness are now finding out where this luscious tents, unbelievable black cars, blue lights, bodyguards, and huge stadiums filled with balloons are now coming from. And we now see to ourselves that this opulence, hierdie gedrog, this animal that have been presented here, does not just cut it to the people that wear red. It's moving into other places and parties that are as guilty and that have as been accused. And here we sit, Chris, with a scenario that within government, we have got people there that are still accused number one. En vragtig, it's been years since Zondo. It's been a 1.3 billion rand process, thousands of papers, probably 800 times more than the VBS scenario. And they have got the gall and the guts to walk and to be sworn in under Almighty God. There they sit. And they have, my oma sou sê, het jy geen skaamte nie? Have you no shame? And that's what I hope. And I'm sorry. They must be brought under the book. They must be quashed in justice. And then they must go visit Pieter Groenewald in their facilities. Sooner than later.
Interesting, guys. What do you think? We know that accountability now appears to be the defining theme for the 7th administration, this GNU, right? And which is really crucial because the GNU actually is led by ANC. We know that President Ramaphosa has the case of Pala Pala on him, which is still sort of like a skeleton in the closet, which is not yet out in the fore. But then the opposition seems to want to use that as a way to, you know, prop up the what has been termed a contradiction of the government of national unity in its fight for justice for the VBS scandal, all right, especially from members of the DA who are now members of the GNU. But anyway, accountability now seems to be what has actually been the driving force of the government of national unity, with blackmail springing here and there, up and down, because of the fact that accountability wants to be maintained as a central force for the government of national unity. And in that light, investigations into misappropriation of funds for personal gain during the 6th administration, the previous administration, has actually gained significant media attention. Additionally, scandals have actually preceded both administrations, and they are now resurfacing, all right, notably involving the Economic Freedom Fighters and also its leader, Julius Malema, in the Vendor Building Society, VBS Mutual Bank scandal. Now, on July the 11th of this year, we know that former VBS Bank chairperson Shifiwa Matotsi entered into a plea agreement with the National Prosecuting Authority, resulting in a 15-year prison sentence, and his affidavit implicated several individuals in the bank's looting, including Julius Malema and EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu. Now, this document actually described how both senior leaders were aware of the illegal payments made to them via Shamega Project, a company registered under the name of Floyd Shivambu's younger brother, Brian Shivambu. Now, these allegations also against the two EFF leaders trace back to 2018. In the affidavit, Shifiwa Matotsi actually stated that the EFF constituencies were VBS target market, and also he added that he further informed them that the VBS was willing to offer a donation to the EFF, and then he proposed that the VBS can actually offer or donate 5 million rand immediately once the bank account had been opened with BBS, an EFF bank account, and also 1 million rand per month to the EFF. This was a promise by Matotsi to the EFF, all right? Matotsi also claimed in the affidavit that he made it clear that the amount could actually be only deposited into a VBS account, and that the EFF should actually therefore open a bank account with a VBS. So this was the nature of the transaction. But now he says that we know that the EFF now faces increased challenges, all right, especially when you see the comeback in the parliament with which it was vociferous in its critique of many GNU policies. The EFF says that the EFF actually did not achieve its anticipated growth in the May 29 elections, and it failed to exceed the 10% threshold which it had relished for quite a while. Now, the newly established Mkhonto Wesizwe, we know that MK Party overtook the EFF as the third largest party in the country, and then the ANC lost a majority, coming down from 60% all the way to 40%. Now, because of that, the DA now got into the government of national unity, and these shifts in dynamics are actually really poignant because the ANC and the EFF have actually previously co-managed the Johannesburg province, Ekurhuleni, and Itikwani metros, all right? However, according to a report by The Guardian and also the Mail, it appears that the ANC is actually cutting its ties with the EFF, and we can see that from this speech where President Ramaphosa seems to be hitting Julius Malema and also Floyd Shivambu really hard. I'll be making another video on the issue with Floyd Shivambu's speech. Anyway, it argues that, the ANC is actually effectively excluding the EFF from governing opportunities, both at the national level and also, it seems, also at the provincial level, all right? Now, we know that the recent allegation of senior EFF officials' involvement in the VBS bank scandal suggests that the party has become what it vehemently opposed, all right? And that the EFF, which has consistently criticized the ANC for state capture and corruption, now faces similar allegations against its leaders. And after a decade of professing to champion the interests of ordinary South Africans and advocating a socialist agenda, it's slowly becoming apparent that the senior EFF officials, they actually might have had divergent or self-serving objectives. That's what this case is actually tending to show. And also, the scandal, this VBS scandal, would likely damage the EFF's reputation and its position. But anyway, I think that the EFF still has a lot of supporters. You see, when I go through the comments on this video, on this channel, and also my other channel where I try to tackle Pan-Africanism and, blackness, I see that a lot of people still support the EFF. A lot of people are probably not aware with the whole VBS scandal thing, but the EFF still enjoys a majority of support, and that's actually really, really interesting to really observe. But anyway, the report actually put together here actually says that this scandal might actually damage the EFF's reputation and its position as a leftist advocate for a more socialist state in South Africa. Now, the pressing question for the EFF is now actually what then lies ahead. With calls for arrest warrants, just like as we hear from Nel De Beer here, for Julius Malema and Shivambu, the party risks actually potential collapse if those two actually head to the, correctional services. Malema, who is the EFF commander-in-chief, has actually been the party's figurehead without any public succession plan in place. And however, it may not be entirely bleak for the EFF. It actually remains uncertain whether Shivambu and Malema will face charges or imprisonment. Should Malema be removed, the party might have the opportunity to redefine itself beyond his leadership, potentially allowing new individuals to rise within its ranks. That being said, anyway, this transition is fraught with challenges. If Malema is ousted, the party's ideology and influence may diminish without its charismatic leader. And the crucial question is whether the EFF can actually recover from this scandal, or if it marks its downfall, probably in the future. I've seen many YouTube videos. I think there's this really I've forgotten the name of the channel anyway. It actually speaks about and asks the question of whether this is the beginning of Julius Malema's downfall. So it's a really tricky place for the EFF to be, and also a really tricky place also for President Ramaphosa to be. In my own analysis and understanding of this whole issue as an outsider, I see that there's a potential and a possibility that both the EFF and the MK could actually activate and push for more justice for the Pala Pala case that's hanging on the head of President Cyril Ramaphosa, especially if the DA wishes to push for an incarceration of further justice for the EFF leader and Vice President Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu as regards the VBS scandal. But this is actually the two-sided crux that we really do not yet understand how it would unfold. The ANC Congress is actually coming up. We know that the ANC Congress is a really powerful space where presidents can actually be dethroned and new presidents can actually be reinstated at the level of the ANC. This is what actually happened to Jacob Zuma when he was ousted during his regime and President Ramaphosa became president. So the chess game now is the fact that if President Ramaphosa then steps down during that Congress and Vice President Paul Mashatile takes over the leadership of the ANC in the government of national unity, what then becomes of the Pala Pala case, which would have been more potent if it had been activated by the opposition when President Ramaphosa was still a head of state. But now that he might be stepping down, What then would happen to that case? And then if the DA then pushes for further justice, for the EFF's leaders, especially since they will now be representing an official opposition in the government, while President Ramaphosa will be at the benches, then I think that would be something to really watch out for. But anyway, I don't know. What do you guys think about this? It's been a lot of information in this video. Share your thoughts in the comments.